Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. We're going to talk about Strixhaven, and we're going to talk about the importance of hierarchy in Strixhaven. So Strixhaven is coming out as, this incredibly powerful book within Dungeons & Dragons overall. Strixhaven is important in Dungeons & Dragons history across every edition, not just 5th edition. It's certainly the most important 5th edition book that's ever been printed, but it's also the second most important book that in Dungeons & Dragons history overall from all the editions. It's a really important book. So, and the reason why is it's opening up mechanical complexity to the interaction pillar. Okay, and that's incredibly important. We've never really done it. We've like made gestures at doing it, but this is very real. So what does Strixhaven do? Well, it brings in the student die for actually doing life things, right? It brings the exams are combat pillar complexity for a completely interaction action, right? So you have student dice, you have benefits for friendships and rivals, you have benefits for being beloved, and then in addition to that, you also have this hierarchy, right? And the hierarchy is really important in Strixhaven. So when you go into Strixhaven, you are going in as a caster. You can be a non-caster class. They made a way for non-caster classes to participate, but the reality is, this is really, I'm a caster of some type, and I'm going through 4 years of college. That's what Strixhaven is. And just to be clear, right, this takes you to 10th level, right? And one of the things I think is this really, more than any other book, Strixhaven really positions you to do things of significance and know who and what you are as you do these powerful things in levels 11 through 20. So unlike any other book before, when you come out of this, just like a real person who's really gone to college, you've made actual choices. Like the backstory of your character has been fully fleshed out, and it's no longer backstory, it's story, right? That's another thing that Strixhaven is doing, is it's turning backstories into story, right? And by the way, I'm convinced there will be other books like this for other, specifically for other backgrounds, right? For like martial, for the martial ones. And actually, this is kind of sad, but like for the martial ones, you don't go to school, you go to war, right? Like that's and you go through a campaign, an actual war campaign. That's never been done in Dungeons and Dragons, right? And here's the thing, right? We can actually get into that in Dungeons and Dragons because Strixhaven has shown how to actually do backgrounds, and that everything that's come before in Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, the backgrounds are just shadows, right? So let's talk about the hierarchy part here. So the hierarchy part, what is the hierarchy? So Strixhaven, when you come in, you could be an initiate, right? So an initiate in for player characters is really only going to be like a fighter. Well, they'll get an initiate class. They really won't go up to apprentice or to these other ones. But initiate is the lowest ranking at the school of Strixhaven, at the University of Strixhaven that has 5 colleges. Okay, so basically, once you get in, right, you have Strixhaven Initiate. It's the lowest level, right? And when I say lowest level, that means like you might not have access to the library, right? You might not have access to all levels of the library. You might not have accesses to the different facilities on campus. And you are going to have to show deference to the higher hierarchy. So let's talk about the higher hierarchies. Next is Apprentice, right? And this is where most player characters will come in. They'll come in as apprentices, and they'll be like, hey, this is, me doing my... And so essentially they have a certain spell list. They get more power, and they have the ability to cast pretty freely, and they have a significant number of spells in their book. They have access to everything on campus, right? At some level, right? Now, of course, I think there are levels on the Biblioplex that are might only be accessible to professors, right? Or students that professors provision to access those layers within the library. The other thing it's doing is when you start to go up through these hierarchies, it's saying knowledge is real power, right? It doesn't matter how fast you can swing your sword. It doesn't matter that you can dual wield 2 great swords. Knowledge is real power, right? It's a complete restructuring for Dungeons and Dragons. And I have to say this too, right? Like, so with Strixhaven, right? it was fun to to think about weapons and chopping goblins in half. No, you'll get no argument from me that was a ton of fun, right? Like, but we've done that. That's completed now, right? And this next section, this ain't going to be as fun. This is much harder, right? We have to look at ourselves. We have to look at the people that we care about. We have to look at society as a whole. We have to really look into the heart and mind of humans, right? And how they think and how they act and what mechanically motivates them and makes them do things or not do things, right? And that is going to be a lot less fun than chopping goblins in half, right? And that's why it had to wait for 47 years and why Gary couldn't do it first, right? But now Dungeons and Dragons has so much power and so much sway, right, that it can draw people in and say, you're going to need to give me some time. You're going to need to interact with this in a way that's less fun than what it used to be, right? And the reason why is the rewards are going to be greater, right? Like, and that, it's real, right? So let's talk about the next level, PlegdeMage. So PlegdeMage is, this is a very fully fledged student, someone who has significant power in their ability to cast, has significant power at the university, right? Like if you're an initiate or apprentice and you end up going against a PlegdeMage, like they're going to have resources to bring to that battle, and you are going to be the underdog. No two ways about it, right? So those are the 3 levels that you can hit as a student. Okay, so you have initiate, you have apprentice, you have PlegdeMage, but the next level is professor, right? And you could be a student who graduates and then becomes a professor at Strixhaven. The other thing is there are going to be very, very talented 5th edition dungeon masters that can run campaigns where one player one or more player is a professor and one or more players are students, right? You can absolutely do that, right? But professor is full access to the campus and the ability to punish students, reward students, withhold things from students, put things that the students didn't have access to directly into their grasp. It is incredibly powerful, right? But that's not the end of hierarchy in Strixhaven. Strixhaven goes even further, right? And that is the dragons, the elder dragons, right? So you have the elder dragon of Silverquill and Witherbloom and Lorehold and Quandrix and Prismari, right? Let me see if I can name them all. So that's Chandrix, Silverquill, and then that is Beladros Witherbloom, right? And then you have Velamachus Lorehold, okay? And then you have Tanazir Quandrix, and finally you have Galazeth Prismari, right? And these are incredibly powerful dragons, right? So one of the things that's great is like Strixhaven fixes that classic problem of, oh, a dragon showed up, we're all about to die, right? No, a dragon showed up, let's have a conversation, right? This fundamentally changes Dungeons and Dragons and what's happening, right? And I think this is why, again, it's why every single commentator is warning people, don't you dare mix this with the other campaigns because it'll just turn into Tears and Flames quick. And for them, it probably would because they don't know how to reach beyond the combat pillar. And they're incredibly frightened of mechanical complexity in the interaction pillar, right? And the reason why is the moment you start doing that, you actually have to look at human behavior in high detail, right? And unlike the difference between a longsword and a greatsword, those type of examinations, those type of examinations of our own minds and our hearts, you don't walk away from that unchanged. You don't, right? It's going to change you in one way or another. And people are incredibly frightened of it. Like, it's across the board. You have people just like, oh, don't mix this peanut butter with your chocolate. You can't do it, right? Like, it's amazing to me what I'm seeing out there. And it's a clanging gong. Every commentator is the same. I've not seen one person who's like, I'm so excited about this. I want to get this mixed in with every campaign I have. This is going to fundamentally change all my campaigns going forward, which it should. But they're like, oh, no, I'm too frightened for that. I can't do it, right? And so basically, these hierarchies are there. And so you go from initiate to apprentice to PlegdeMage to professor, right, to dragon, right? And you're like, well, Scott, they can't play dragons. They absolutely can play dragons, right? So there's all kinds of ways that your player characters can become an elder dragon in Strixhaven, or take over an elder dragon, right? Take over, their literal physical form, and then be the elder dragon for Strix. And this doesn't exist in any other book, right? Like, you don't see this level of hierarchy. And also, player characters saying, not only do I need to make sure that I can duel and be able to do combat's right there. It's not missing in Strixhaven. Strixhaven is like, yeah, you need to understand everything about combat, and now we're going to do the same level of hard work on the interaction pillar, right? So it's not replacing it, it's additional, right? Which, again, I'm saying, holy cows, like, the idea that being a dungeon player or a dungeon master is simple is outrageously ludicrous, and it always has been, and it continues to be more so every single day, right? What we do is truly incredible, and the ramifications of it are massive, right? And so and these hierarchies, the player characters have to work within these hierarchies, right? They have to show deference to people who are higher up on the hierarchy, right? They can't just throw down, because if they do, they're going to lose. They don't have the resources, right? Or they're going to have to think really hard, right? And so, again, this is just, from a social perspective, from an interaction perspective, that what's happening in Strixhaven is it's like all of D&D, Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition specifically, is being picked up on a crane and just lifted to a new level by Strixhaven. I'm incredibly excited about this book. Those are my thoughts. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.